It starts with questioning, as one does, when even a childish why is not that bizarre anymore, just annoying. Although it is not a question that is annoying, it's the absence of the answer. Then, naturally, it goes through the Socratic I know that I know nothing, passes by Descartes' I think, therefore I am, and somewhere there, after the either or and the God is dead, you get to the point of pushing and realizing that Camus was right. Life is a hospice, not a hospital. And you are the most annoying patient there. Albert Camus, also known as that French Algerian fella who wrote the book La Peste that got back on our bookshelves when social distancing became a popular pastime and not just my personal hobby, was a philosopher who finally asked the right question besides why, which was something like, so what? Or rather, so what you gonna do about it? Because if life taught you anything, then there is at least one thing as clear as day. It is all a big load of absurd, of ridicule, where any semblance of control will laugh in your face the second you believe you have it, and where paradoxes exist just so you could finally scratch that part of your brain to the point of making it hurt. And in the midst of war, chaos, disease, and loss of meaning, and ambiguous suicidal proclivities, there is Camus, outstretching his hand, saying, "Shall we go play football, no?" And you stand there, perplexed, because you fucking hate football, though nevertheless grateful for the sentiment. And he makes you remember the times when you studied Greek mythology in the 6th grade. Remember that man who was rolling a boulder up a hill just to see it fall over and over again, telling you to imagine him being happy. Wait, rolling a boulder up a hill, yet being happy? Where have I heard it before? Lesya Ukrainka, whose real name is not Lesya Ukrainka, I know, how crazy, is known as the coolest person ever in the entirety of existence, and also as a writer, a poet, a playwright, the only woman to appear on the obverse of Ukrainian banknotes, a person who knew at least 9 languages and is attributed with the introduction of the word promi, which in Ukrainian means a sun ray. But if you are a Ukrainian pupil, one of the first things you learn about the woman is that when she was young, she got ill with tuberculosis and was fighting it her entire life. Every textbook, every teacher made sure that you knew that Lesya Ukrainka was a great martyr, whose health was a liability and days numbered, whose struggle was eternal and whose creativity was at odds with the debilitating disease, creating an image of a feeble, bedridden woman with the only outlet, writing. However, if you asked what Lesya thought about it, you'd just need to read her actual works. Who told you that I am weak, that I am to some fate subjected? Indeed, is my hand shaking, or is my song or thought is limp? If there was any characteristic that would be apt to use when it came to Lesya Ukrainka and the disease, it would be rebellious. In L'Homme Révolté, Camus creates an argument for rebellion as a basic human reaction, a rejection of a norm, a metaphysical revolt, a revolt against conditions of life, against creation itself. At the same time, he deems it an aspiration towards clarity and unity of thought, paradoxically leading towards order. The rebellion shall come out as the result of a contradiction between the human mind's persistent search for clarification and the meaningless nature of the world. The two clash, the human yearning for unity and the unreasonable silence in return. And from this contradiction, the absurd is born. The universe is not necessarily absurd in itself, but our relationship with it is. Though, by acknowledging it, by believing in nothing, we in turn believe in our own protest against the norm, believe in the value of our assessment of the world. We put value into our own judgment of what surrounds us and our place in it, despite all the inevitable failures that preceded and will succeed us. Despite it all, the rebel keeps the heroic defiance to whatever oppresses human beings. It was not for the lack of suffering and, yes, feeling weak, sick, deprived, but these words would never be those I could possibly associate with the poet, considering everything what she was, Her sister, for instance, said that Lesya kept overestimating her own health, forgetting being sick sometimes, claiming she had 10 lives, comparing herself to a tree that may live for 2 centuries, and at her deathbed was very much preoccupied with the poem she was in the middle of writing. She didn't just rage against the dying of the light, she rebelled, lit herself from the inside and carried her own light when the one given was losing its color, and did it with both a sharp and mellow word in her arsenal. As I die, the abandoned fire of my songs will burn in the world, and the restrained sawing will saw. It will burn at night, it will burn in the daytime. These words are from her play, The Forest Song, the play that, as a Ukrainian pupil, you first encounter in 10th grade, followed by a homework task to learn one important passage from it. In The Forest Song, the main character is a supernatural being, a creature of the forest called Mavka, that looks like a young girl with lush greenish hair and a curious nature, who decides to interact with people, despite the warnings of a forest elf about the disasters that humans bring. By the way, other characters, when translated, carry such names as He Who Rents the Dikes, Starvelings, and Lost Babes. The last one is my favorite by far, considering that in original they are called Potrechata. Despite the warnings, Mavka falls in love with a human, Lukasz, attracted by his flute, enchanted by the melody. When the boy intends to cut a birch with a knife to make yet another instrument, Mavka stops him and asks not to offend her sister. Lukasz is bewildered, but curious. She is not like the other girls, and she speaks to his heart, to his melody. He falls in love right back. Since their first meeting, we see a dynamic where, while the worlds of each differ, the love for beauty and freedom unites them. But it is a drama, drame féerie, to be exact. Mavka, true to her nature, stays in that world of beauty and freedom despite the attempts to fit in the human world. With the beginning of autumn, Lukasz must go back to the world of labor and duty, where one cannot listen to the wheat, one must reap it to survive. Their worlds clash. Thus we learn Mavka's last monologue, which appears at the very end, when our forest creature turns into a dry willow, deprived of her body. It starts something like this. Ah, for that body do not sigh, 'tis now infused and glows with fire divine, as clear and bright, as glittering as good wine, whose life in sparkling bubbles mounts on high. Not but an airy pinch of dust remains to mingle with the earth below. Beside these waters shall a willow grow, my end give life to something more robust. From the first lines, we learn that she is not perturbed by its deprivation, but rather reminds of the inevitable fate that any living being's body will face, no matter what, and muses that when one dies, one does not need to die in vain, but in fact may hope to be the beginning of something new. And to me here shall many seek, both rich and poor, the joyful and the sad, their griefs I'll mourn, their joys shall make me glad. To everyone my soul shall gently speak. The soul, the spirit, is understood as our main driving force, her main driving force, the force to be reckoned with. And I shall find some word for all, the quiet murmur of my rustling leaves, the willow pipe that tender music breathes, the melancholy dews that from my branches fall. I'll give them back in mystic speech, all those dear tender songs you used to sing, the tunes you played for me in that lost spring. Oh, play again, beloved, I beseech. And so, abiding her word, her beloved plays the same melody that first united their souls. He plays as the seasons change, in a wild kaleidoscope, as the fiery autumn leaves tumble, as the blinding snow falls, plays until he can play no more. Sisyphus is a king of Ephyra. I first learned about him at a young age, being very much into reading Greek myth and watching that old Disney cartoon Hercules, thinking myself cool for knowing that Heracles was better. After first reading the myth, I could finally understand what my mum meant by calling all the fun things I did Sisyphean labor. Hades punished Sisyphus for cheating death twice by forcing him to roll an immense boulder up a hill, only for it to fall down every time it neared the top, repeating this action for eternity. We all know the story. What a weird punishment, thought I, turning the page and reading further about much more intriguing stuff Greek mythology had to offer, though the image of a big round rock and a steep tall hill stayed in my mind. The Forest Song is not the only work of Pani Lesya that you learn in the 10th grade. There are many, really, starting from her collections of poems full of reminiscence of beauty, love, courage, purpose, and continuing through her epic plays and sharp prose. But the one that you truly remember forever, even if awoken in the middle of the night, being told to recite the first poem you know now or else, is Contra Spem Spero. Contra Spem Spero, or Against All Hope, I Hope. The title of the poem is an example of an oxymoron, a paradoxical expression with a subtle insight into the specifics of Latin language, taken from the letter of Paul the Apostle to the Romans, Contra spem in spem credidit. There is no Sisyphus, no Camus, no Absurd, for me, without Contra Spem Spero. Because as a 10th grader you have no idea about life, really. You have not had time to go through it much, read about all these philosophers, who, in their peculiar way of using funny words, try to convey something of importance to you. All you have is a high school teacher telling the class that each one who does not learn this not too long yet not short enough for a pupil's liking poem, written by the ever-beloved Lesya Ukrainka by Monday, will be failed. And you sigh, and you open your textbook, and you start reading it, because getting a 2, that's enough for my English audience, for a poem you were too lazy to learn is too stupid. It is just a poem, so let's learn it. Thoughts away, you heavy clouds of autumn, for now springtime comes, a gleam with gold, shall thus in grief and wailing for ill fortune all the tale of my young years be told? No, I want to smile through tears and weeping, sing my songs where evil holds its sway, hopeless, a steadfast hope forever keeping. I want to live, you, thoughts of grief, away. On poor sad fallow land unused to tilling, I'll sow blossoms, brilliant in hue. I'll sow blossoms where the frost lies chilling. I'll pour bitter tears on them as dew. And those burning tears shall melt, dissolving all that mighty crust of ice away. Maybe blossoms will come up unfolding, singing springtime too for me some day. Up the flinty steep and craggy mountain, a weighty ponderous boulder I shall raise, and bearing this dread burden, a resounding song I'll sing, a song of joyous praise. In the long, dark, ever viewless night-time, not one instant shall I close my eyes. I'll seek ever for the star to guide me, she that reigns bright mistress of dark skies. Yes, I'll smile, indeed through tears and weeping, sing my songs where evil holds its sway. Hopeless, a steadfast hope forever keeping, I shall live, you, thoughts of grief, away. This is it. This is how I knew it. This is where my Sisyphus comes from. This is why reading Camus, learning about the philosophy of absurdism, about the absurd hero Sisyphus, did not seem particularly new. One must imagine Sisyphus happy, or maybe laughing, singing songs in the depths of hell and sowing blossoms in the midst of winter. There is no room for anything less. Oh, for that body do not sigh. There is no hope. We hope against all hope. We are aware of the absurdity. We just refuse to be broken by it. Aware of the crashing fate and refuse to resign to it. I cannot say that any of it became a conscious thought at the time. It stayed there in the periphery, putting a semi-present notions about life, about the will to exist beyond just the existence, about the times when the weight of that stupid rock became crushing and ever unbearable, about how dumb and ultimately insane the whole ordeal was. But for the length of that poem, you could walk beside and smile through tears, sing alone and seek that star. And maybe, when the thoughts of grief finally come back, you'll know that even they do tumble down, being heavy enough, just like that rock of yours. Larissa Petrivna Kosach died on the 1st of August in 1913 at the age of 42. Her last literary work, the drama On the Shores of Alexandria, remained unfinished. 3 months later, in November 1913, another individual will be born in the north of Africa. He will not live long as well, just a shy longer, until the age of 46. He'll write in French and dress in style. One day, as we all do, he will be rolling that stupid boulder up the damn hill, just to see it fall down again. However, at the very peak, right before it does, he'll finally look over and gaze into the abyss, which is waiting for him there, as it always does. And he'll look, and instead of surrendering to it willingly, letting her embrace take him away forever to relieve all pain, all sorrow, instead of letting the abyss dictate the manner of his rock and rolling, he'll just gaze back and simply say, "Hey, why the long face?"